I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is out on assignment. I'm literally just getting off the plane. Check my hair out a little bit there. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Mike Washington is on assignment. I'm literally, as I said, getting off a plane and just booted up. Boy, I tell you, got it good. Got in a little early, Charles. Thought I was going to jump on here as you leading it, but I snuck it away. I know you could have handled it, but I figured I would do what I do since I found a way to get in here on time. So none other than Charles Bishop and Wilton Jackson II. How you doing today, gentlemen?
Doing well, Doc. Doing well. I mean, we issued out some hardware this past Sunday, talking about the games from Saturday. We got some great matchups coming into the weekend. But it just kind of dawned on me today. Wow, seemed like the football season just started yesterday, and we're already toward the end. So
that's for sure. It certainly is toward the end. I don't know why you had to rub it in like that a little bit, but you know, I know it is. It's good. So Wilton, how about it? It's like you talking about folks clinching and stuff like that. Wilton, where are you on assignment? You always on the move. Where are you?
I am in Atlanta. I had to come to Atlanta for Atlanta Dreams press conference. They hired a new coach, and so I had to come there. They hired the former basketball coach at Florida Gulf Coast University, Carson-Newman. So I was there for that.
What do you think of the hire? Since
I actually like the hire. He's one of the more winningest coach in women's basketball history. He plays in a tempo that's very fast. He shoots a lot of threes. It's going to be a little different for Atlanta, for the Dream, a team that has not been shooting a lot of threes as a franchise. So, like, just to see what he's able to do with this franchise, and kind of continue the trajectory of where this franchise is going. I think it's going to be good to see.
See, Wilton, I thought I'd let you show out a little bit since you didn't come in here with all this clenching and all this chest out big.
Yeah, nah. I'm gonna save it for later.
I knew it's coming. Welcome to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. This is episode 585. With that being said, we're gonna get right into it. I'll get a chance to do a little bit more of the intro, but I'm gonna start with Charles and let him do some of the news of the day.
Yeah, we start things off on a somber note as one of the great all-time greats in the SWAC and former Chicago Bull, Bob Love, Butterbean, they called him, Bob Butterbean Love. He passed away this past Sunday, I believe. He passed away at the age of 81. But this coming from HBCU Sports, the NBA world is mourning the loss of Chicago Bulls legend and Southern University alum Bob Love, who died on Monday. After a long battle with cancer. He was 81, and this is a statement from the Chicago Bulls. Bob was a true legend and a beloved member of our family during his 9 remarkable seasons with the Bulls. Bob was a 3-time NBA All-Star, tenacious defender, and a cornerstone of our team. With his number 10 jersey hanging in the United Center rafters, his on-court achievements are forever etched in the history, but Bob's impact transcended basketball. So definitely thoughts and prayers to the Bob Love family. Before there was a Jordan, there was a Bob Love that was filling it up for the Chicago Bulls. My dad was a big Bob Love fan back in the day.
Appropriately so. With that, let's do our appropriate, as we like to do here, particularly our ancestors. Let's do a moment of silence, and we'll get right back to it. With that moment of silence, let me come back. And before I go to you, Wilton, see what you have on your news of the day, let me do appropriate welcome. Welcome to episode 585 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that's covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports, from institutions large and small, from the NCAA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. Short, we call it just HBCU Sports Pedagogy. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. My co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. As I said, Mike Washington's on assignment, so we have Wilton joining us, giving us some love. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live. KCOH 1230 AM studios with the Radio Hall of Famer. That's multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in a beautiful home, Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. With that being said, on to you as I promised, Wilton Jackson. What the second? Make sure I get that second in there. It just rolls off the tongue appropriately and just sounds more fun. With that being said, Wilton, what's on your mind in terms of HBCU news of the day?
So I'm going to get into some of the SWAC Football Weekly honors. Southwestern Athletic Conference tabbed Mississippi Valley State's Nathan Rimbert, Alabama A&M's Victor Barbosa, and Texas Southern's Athene Renfro, along with Jackson State's Robert McDaniel and Matt Knoll for SWAC Football Weekly honors. Rimbert hauled in 7 receptions for 130 yards, including a 60-yard touchdown that electrified the crowd. He tallied 65 yards after the catch, and his ability to create plays and capitalize on key moments was instrumental in securing Mississippi Valley's first win of the season. McDaniel had an impressive game, finishing with a career-high 14 tackles, including 9 solo stops. He also recorded 3 tackles for a loss and 1 sack during JSU's victory, along with a forced fumble to help seal the 16-10 win. Barbosa helped Alabama A&M defeat Grambling State as the Bulldogs came from behind for the 22-17 victory. He went 4-4 on field goal attempts with kicks of 45, 44, 38, and 19 yards. His 19-yard field goal gave Alabama A&M a 22-17 lead with 7:20 remaining. Jackson State punter Knoll kept Alabama State pinned deep most of the game with an average start of their own 24-yard line. He averaged 44.4 yards per punt with 3 punts inside the 20 and inside the 5-yard line. And the newcomer, Renfro, ran for a career-high 129 yards as TSU closed out its home portion of the schedule on a winning note after defeating Bethune-Cookman 17-14. His 28-yard touchdown run in the early portion of the fourth quarter moved TSU ahead 17-7 following the point after the touchdown.
Good information. Congratulations again to all those teams that won this past week, in particular Jackson State, Southern University. They locked in their bid to the SWAC championship game. It will be hosted in Jackson State. I guess we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about some scenarios we thought, and we were trying to do the calculations so we could either bring it on the show Sunday. We didn't have any information by then, but we had locked it in and thought about it. But all the other things that took place on Saturday, obviously Charles had to get out and get everybody's thoughts on that. But we guessed it right. I think I was a little off maybe on why, but in multiple scenarios, oddly enough, it came down to Jackson. And maybe we'll get a chance, depending on how it flow of the show, or they want to share that as we get in a little more of that discussion. But we will unveil the mid-major poll rankings. We're closing out on that championship, and it's down to basically 2 teams. We'll see what that looks like. Charles, with that being said, what's some other news of the day that you want to share with the people?
Yeah, let's take a look at the MEAC weekly honors. North Carolina Central's running back Jamari Taylor was named the MEAC Conference Offensive Player of the Week. Howard's defensive back Robert Jones III, he earned the Defensive Player of the Week honors, while Delaware State's defensive back Dwayne Carter was named the Rookie of the Week, and North Carolina Central's A.C. McMoore and South Carolina State's Kyle Gallegos earned the Offensive Lineman and Specialist of the Week, respectively. Let's take a look at Jamari Taylor, what he did. He amassed 206 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns in North Carolina Central's 26-3 win over Howard. He also recorded 6 catches for 78 yards. We look back at Robert Jones III, the 6'1", 180-pound senior from Fairwood, Maryland, secured 1 interception and 6 solo tackles against North Carolina Central. Carter, he registered 2 pass breakups with 2 tackles in the game against Norfolk State. That's Delaware State's defensive back, Dwayne Carter, who was named the Rookie of the Week. We take a look at the offensive lineman of the week, McMoore, 6'1", 305 from Rock Hill, South Carolina. He recorded a 92% grade on his assignments with 2 pancake blocks, leading the Eagles with 563 yards of total offense. Break out the syrup for McMoore. And Kyle Gallegos, the 5'9", 150-pound freshman from Fort Worth. He collected 555 yards on 9 kickoffs with 6 touchbacks. He went 6 of 7 on point after touchdown kicks to aid the Bulldogs in their 54-7 win over the Morgan State Bears. So those are your MEAC players of the week.
Good stuff. Tennessee State, Sandra Ellis was named Big South OVC Freshman of the Week for the fourth time this season. Did the story on the website. Good job. Snickershop.talk.com. That is Brandon. Go check out his work, particularly right now. Tennessee State is worthy of you checking them out and reading as they chase a share with championship potentially out.
Yeah.
Automatic beat. Charles, what are your thoughts, man? Why are you smiling there? You don't love the Tennessee State.
You know what? As if on cue, it's like somebody wants me to make sure I get this out there. But tickets for the 2024 Pepsi Southwestern Athletic Conference Championship are now available. Go purchase online at GoJSUTigers.com. Tickets can be purchased in person or at Veterans Memorial Stadium box office and Lee Williams Athletics and Assembly Center box office. So
yeah, if you want your seat in the media room, you might want to get that out, Charles.
I want to make sure I get that out there.
I'm just saying. Hey, I'm gonna get mine, but if you say, you got folks that gotta feel comfortable with you, man. I don't know what it is. How you living? Folks be like, Charles.
Yeah, make sure you read this.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I got you, Chief. I got you.
Anything else? With that being said, I wanted to kind of go back to Bob Love. As professor and faculty, one of the greatest moments I had was sharing Black Magic with my students that had not seen that documentary. And obviously Bob Love is in that documentary and has a prominent role in terms of talking about his experience at Chicago, even more so when he was at Southern and the SWAC. And so I was enjoying when I saw Black Magic. And we have the class, which is the only class Charles has taught this class, and I'm glad that he has had the time and the opportunity to lecture that class when I was moving and had to get into some administrative roles. It wasn't a better person. I felt comfortable with handing it over and know it would be done serious, critically, and right. But we're the only institution in the country that actually has a course for credit. It is embedded into our both our undergraduate and graduate course for the degree, which is the history of HBCU sports. We call it the sporting diaspora, and different mechanisms where we talk about it. And one of the things I do in that course is we have a dissertation that looks at the history of the SWAC all the way up to like the 80s, going back shortly before it was founded. I mean, when we get in that transition from the 60s and 70s, that's when I introduced the movie Black Magic. So, students, obviously reading is something they need to do, but you could tell the difference when they got to see the film and the music and the audio. It took their interests, it took their learning to another level. So I wanted to acknowledge that, and probably a good time to go back and revisit Black Magic and watch it to celebrate Bob Love appropriately. With that, I'll end it there. And we'll turn it over on the other side. I'll be right back with you after this break.
Choice Hotels is a family of brands that helps you get the most for your money so you can be any traveler you want to be.
You could be a free hot breakfast hero at a comfort hotel. Yes! That's how you waffle!
Mr. This script got a plot twist at a Radisson hotel.
A business big leaguer.
Go for key.
Even the ultimate pool float inflator.
With 22 brands and the best value for your money, Choice Hotels has a stay for any you. Book direct at choicehotels.com, where travels come true. Gotta get the corners.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted CAVIL'S voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. CAVIL'S Voice, CAVIL'S Voice, CAVIL'sVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. With that being said, let's unveil our mid-major poll rankings, week number 11. Things are closing down on somebody, proverbially, will be announced as our mid-major division champion for 2024-2025. So it'll be fascinating. Last 2 years, Benedict had it on lock. We already know that they won't be in the mix. But let's go over these teams that had great seasons to some form of fashion and those that receiving votes. Nobody dropped out this week in the mix, but we had some receiving votes. You've seen this is familiar, same teams previous week. Shaw Bears at 6-4, 4-3. As the playoffs have come out now, we know that their season is officially complete. Albany State, Albany, as Mike likes to remind us, Golden Rams, 6-4, 6-2, 111 points. Their season is complete. And then their rival, Fort Valley State, 6-4, 6-2, they gave us the Wildcats and the Golden Rams. They gave us that great Fountain City Classic matchup. They are at 1-10. So that essentially gives you 8, 9, and 10. So if you look at the top 10, you see those teams that are outside of the magical top 7, but had a tremendous season. With that being said, let's go into the top 7. We can kind of break this up and see what it shakes out, who's in, who's out, and your thoughts. Number 7 is Livingston Blueberries, 6-4, 4-3, 124 points. They were ranked 7. And number 6, Winston-Salem State Rams, 7-3, 5-2, 237 points. They were previously ranked 6. Number 5, Clark Atlanta Panthers, after their loss in the SIAC championship game, they had a great season. They fell one spot from 4 to 5. They are 7-3, 6-2, 140 points, as they were previously ranked 4. At number 4, you have the Virginia State Trojans, 7-4, 6-1, 148 points. They fall 2 spots from number 2. Classic CIAA matchup. Hate the way it ended at the end. Certainly be understanding to see. Hopefully that does not do anything too much in terms of the playoff bid for Virginia Union. But that being said, Virginia State obviously had a big victory over the rival Virginia Union 2 weeks ago to clinch a spot in the championship game, and they faced them again in Virginia, which ultimately became a classic matchup. One for the record books with it going back and forth, tied late. And then ultimately Virginia Union gave it to Byers, and Byers took it home for the Panthers. So Virginia State, the Trojans, with a great season, no playoff bid. Season comes to a complete at 7-4, 6-1. At number 3, Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls. Their season also came to an end, no playoff bid. A lot of folks kind of shaking their head at that. Tough way to end the season. With 2 straight losses. People will argue that believe they shouldn't be in. That was the reason why, or at least they will make the framework whether they believe they should be in or not. Many people will give you that. Others that think they should be in will talk about the body of work, but it was not to be. 8-2, 5-2, 165 points. They do move up 2 spots in terms of just the overall body, computers, and what other teams did. They found themselves at number 3. At number 2, you have Virginia Union Panthers, 8-3, 6-1. They gained the first place vote as they took home the CIAA trophy, and they ultimately got a bid to the Division II playoffs. We'll talk about that after you give me your thoughts on this top 7. And they were 168 points, and they move up a spot from 3 to close out things in week number 11. And number 1, Miles Golden Bears, won the SIAC championship in great fashion. 9-2 caused a lot of turnovers and got it done on both sides of the ball. They end the season 9-2. That elusive 10-win mark is right escaping them. We'll see if they can get it as they got a bid to the playoffs. They finished the regular season 8-0, which is a statement in the SIC. 6 first-place votes, 205 points, 1 first-place vote. I'm intrigued what your thoughts are. Let's go over a couple of things. When you look at the top 7, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams out of the CIAA. Mm-hmm. People would say, particularly what was known as previously the CIAA South. It cannibalized itself in a lot of ways. It was so tough. A lot of those teams actually beat the teams in the Northern Division, Virginia State, Virginia Union. But the way the schedule was set up, those did not necessarily count in the standings, some of them. One of them did. But not only did they cannibalize themselves so much in what was the Southern Division that none of those teams played for a championship, but it looks like they did so much cannibalization that they also put the CIAA that beat everybody in the. Remember, they were undefeated against the SIC now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued what your thoughts on there. There's a lot of ways you can go with this. And maybe it's just one of those years where the numbers shake out enough that you could argue your conference was deeper, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you had the quote-unquote best team or the best team that had the best season. And so those are the kind of questions I have with only 2 teams out of the CIAA in the mix. If you stretch it to that 10, you at least get 4. You still have 6. CIAA, the NIA programs. Shout out Texas College. They went a mix. All of them basically got shut out at this point. So it's a lot of things you can go with. What direction? I'm going to go with you, Wilton Jackson, the second. Okay. Since you looking so dapper Dan there, I'm going to give you the opportunity to bless us with your thoughts on how I kind of wrap things up. What direction you want to take?
So looking at the top 7, with Livingstone being number 7, I think what really put them there is some of those wins they got at the end. Like that win over Johnson C. Smith was huge for them. That was a big win. Winston-Salem State, I'm okay with them being there at number 6. Clark being at 5 with the other 4 teams ahead of them, I'm okay with that as well. But this is just me. When I look at 1, 2, 3, and 4, correct. But I guess for all this season, we've been saying the CIAA was stronger than the SIAC. I get that Miles has the better record, 9-2, 8-0. Obviously, Virginia Union 8-3 and 6-1. But I think that if we were really going to stick to that the CIAA had a stronger strength or was stronger than the SIAC this year, could you make an argument that Virginia Union could be number 1?
Yeah, I think you could make the argument. Are you saying? Are you seeking to make that argument? Or are you just putting it out on the table?
I'm just putting it out there on the table. I'm just putting it out there on the table. That's it. Because both of them are champions. But I just know throughout this entire season, throughout all the weeks that we've been talking about the rankings, we have definitely for sure. I think all of us have said it was no argument that the CIAA was the stronger conference this year than the SIAC.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't argue with you. I don't know who would argue. I mean, this is one of the years where you can say numbers don't lie. It's in the numbers in terms of conference to conference. But then, Charles, coming to you, the argument becomes if you play in a tougher conference and you have similar records, 1 loss, less loss. What does that mean? I guess both of them played FCS HBCU programs on the road. Relatively close games. Virginia Union led against Hampton. Hampton's had a pretty solid season. Alabama State has had a pretty solid season. Alabama State, you may argue, depending on how deep you want to get in there, that they recovered a little more than anybody else in terms of how deep they had to go into the quarterback. Literally, a guy that was playing wide receiver the first, second game of the season ultimately is now leading the team.
At one point, we thought Alabama State was done.
Exactly, and they refused to die. Credit to how they played that game on Saturday. It was a tremendous game to watch. Again, see how things ended up at the end when the final whistle blew, but that was a great game in terms of if you're a fan of SWAC football or HBCU football or FCS football or just football in general, in my opinion. A lot of good things took place in that matchup. But back to this mid-major, Charles, what direction I want to kind of hear what you think on the top 7, and then I layer that question on there. Miles, Virginia Union, where are you going?
I'm really wanting to push Winston-Salem up. I know Clark played in the SIAC championship game, but if we're making an argument that the CIAA was the stronger conference this year, then probably I could flip-flop Winston-Salem and Clark right there, both with 7-3 records. Obviously, there's a discrepancy in the conference record, but and then Winston-Salem State, they have that win over Virginia State, but they do have 2 tough losses in conference. So I don't know. I'm trying to shove them up a little bit, but it's tough to make the argument with the 2 conference losses. But when you take a look at Miles and Virginia Union, Wilton, you on to something, man. If our argument is the CIAA got the sweep over the SIAC, which team don't I want to see at this point in the season? And with that being my deciding factor, right now I don't want to see Miles at this point in the season. I think Miles is playing probably some of the best football that they played. They really jumped out on Clark. I mean, from the jump, it was impressive to see what they did against Clark, because I thought that was going to be more of a game than it was. But probably I'm okay with Miles being number 1 in front of Virginia Union.
We do have the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked about the playoffs matches, I want to get your thoughts on that. That is Carson-Newman, the Eagles sit at 9-2. They will go on the road to Fairfield, Alabama, Greater Birmingham, to Albert J. SLOAN-ALUMNI Stadium to face Miles Golden Bears. As you see, are 9-2, 8-0 in conference place. So that's one of the matchups. So what are your thoughts in terms of that matchup? But before we go into that matchup, you also have Virginia Union Panthers 8-3. They go on the road at Wingate Bulldogs 9-1. Erwin Belk Stadium, Wingate, North Carolina Central. The number 1 seed is Valdosta State. They had that vaunted Southern Gulf Coast Conference over there, right? Gulf Conference, I should say. But they're led by HBCU graduate. But you would need a major upset in the second round, probably for both of these teams. But obviously they got to get past this first round to see them play each other head to head, and basically what would be a bid to the final 4 teams out of this region. So one question I had before we look at these matchups is, would you be more interested in seeing the playoff matchup, or would you have an interest of seeing Miles Golden Bears take on Virginia Union Panthers in a neutral site for a mid-major HBCU championship or bowl game, which would be a de facto championship?
Mm-hmm.
Charles, which one would you rather see?
Absolutely.
Why?
I want to see a 14 playoff where you're taking a look at the top 4 mid-major teams.
Oh, he's in 14. Okay.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I'd love to see Miles versus Virginia State and Johnson City versus Virginia Union. I think it would be have the intrigue, and then you get your mid-major champion there at the end. I think it just creates. I think our fan bases want to see those matchups. I mean, obviously, we had to break through that mindset with regards to the SWAC and the MEAG not being in the playoffs. And to be honest with you, quite a few of us still are back, still want to see, the playoff matchup. But we see the success of the Celebration Bowl, and it would be great to replicate that at the Division II level for our HBCU.
Can it be replicated, Wilton? And if it can, which one would you have more interest? Before you answer that question, one of the things that's what a little more challenging, whether it's FCS or Division II, is how you would carve out the rules that would allow you to play a mini playoff game with 4 teams regardless. So without that part of it, let's just talk about a 1-game scenario bowl game. Would you have more interest in that? Wilton?
Absolutely. Because here's the thing. The teams that you just named that these two schools that Miles and Virginia Union are playing, most people may not even know who they are. The more of the general fans. I'm not saying that they don't, but a good portion of them may not know. But I think that to know that if they were going to be playing each other, Miles and Virginia Union, in a bowl game very similar to like how the SWAC and MEAC play for the Celebration Bowl, I'm almost guaranteed that you would get way more interest in those games in a game like that from fans. Obviously, the alumni from those both institutions would tune into their game on TV. They would come out to their game. I definitely think that with what we see continuously with the Celebration Bowl on the SWAC and MEAC level, I definitely feel like it could be duplicated with the CIAA and SIAC.
Oh, great information, great comments, great thoughts. With that being said, let's extend this a little more and let's go ahead and give love and get back into the real world. And let me get your thoughts on Carson-Newman, the Eagles, taking on Miles Golden Bears. Charles, where are you going with that matchup? Can Miles get it done? They're at home. They've been playing really well. Do you see them getting the win over the Eagles, or will this be a tougher matchup with the Eagles playing some good football themselves?
No, I think it is a tough matchup, but I love Miles' defense going in this game, and Carson-Newman is just coming off a game where they played Wingate, coming off a season low 84 yards, or where Wingate's defense really throttled Carson-Newman. So going up against a tough defense in the playoffs, I really like Miles in this matchup. I do have concern as I flip that around with regards to Virginia Union taking on Wingate. I think that's a tougher matchup just because looking at Wingate's defense in terms of what they've been able to do all season long. And, really, obviously everybody talks about stopping the Virginia Union running attack. And I think, whatever deficiencies start to show up really in the playoffs.
Yeah, good stuff. Same question to you, Wilton, but I'm going to layer it with this based on what Charles said. Virginia Union has the experience of being in the playoffs last year. Oftentimes people talk about the fact that you need to kind of be there to get lathered up and feel, the level that you have to play at and concentrate over a full game in that matchup versus Miles. They being the home team. Between those two matchups, which one do you feel more comfortable has a chance to get the win? Are you similar to Charles, or are you going in a different direction? Does having the playoff experience play anything in your mind that may give Virginia Union the edge with both teams winning, or the edge with them winning while Miles will not, even though they're at home?
I think the experience helps, but I think the matchup that Virginia Union drew is going to be the game changer, because, like to Charles's point, Wingate is going to be a pretty tough team. This is the same team that just beat Carson-Newman, who's about to get ready to play Miles. So when I look at that, Carson-Newman, I was looking at their running back Jaden Sullins. They have a really strong rushing attack with him, and if you're Miles, thankfully you have a really strong defense that can likely stop their rushing attack. So I'm interested to see if they can do it. Playing at home definitely helps in front of the home crowd. You don't have to travel anywhere if you're Miles. So I think the likelihood of one of the HBCUs winning a game would be more towards Miles than it would be to Virginia Union.
Certainly. We'll take our next break. Heard the comments asking the question, who says that MEAC can't have a team in the playoff? Any team, any of the FCS or Division II programs, HBCU or historically white colleges, HWCUs, I said, can obviously get a bid to the playoffs. In the scenarios we're talking about, you were looking at large bid, and when we talk about Division II, there's the automatic qualifier. So yeah, we're very clear in terms of the playoff scenarios and how teams would get in. We were talking particularly about the Division II and what that looked like in terms of the matchup. But we'll turn the page and get a little more into the FCS level in the next segment, and we'll talk about some of those key games and matchups coming up this weekend. Probably the biggest one in terms of the playoffs at the FCS level will be Tennessee State as they take on Southeast Missouri. Another big one is going to be for a different reason, which is North Carolina Central on the road to Delaware State. With the suspensions that came out, I want to see what these guys think in terms of how much that may affect them. If they can find a way to get the bid, arguably you could say both of them would be in a position to get playoffs. regardless if Tennessee State wins or loses. Some people would say they should still be in. If they win, they lock it up, probably to get in. In some cases, depending on tiebreakers, they may actually get in as the automatic qualifier OVC. So we'll break a little bit that down in the next segment and tell you what that means and what that will be. And we'll talk about a couple of other key games to keep your eyes on for various reasons. Stick with us after this break.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
Hey, grab me one too.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. It looks like Mike Washington and Charles is on assignment as well, as he probably had to jump out for a minute. We'll see if we'll get him back in. But with that being said, I have Wilton, so I'm gonna get in there and get a little mix up here. I want to talk about a little bit about this Tennessee State matchup first. But before I do that, I want to give an update on the Big South OVC playoff AQ. You have SEMO would earn that Southeast Missouri, for those that are not familiar with the teams out of the Big South OVC. They defeat Tennessee State this weekend. They would finish as a record of 7-1. And obviously they would get the automatic bid by winning the conference. It was everybody else would have 2 losses or more in the conference standing. There is a way that you get a 4-way tie with Tennessee State defeating Southeast Missouri, which means both of them would finish at 6-2. There's also a case where Tennessee Tech and Tennessee Martin could win this weekend, and they would ultimately finish the season at 6-2. And that 4-way tiebreaker scenario, SEMO would also get the automatic bid. There's a 3-way tie scenario where, again, this case, Tennessee State would win, beating Southwest Missouri, and Tennessee Tech would lose. Tennessee Martin would win. You'd have a 3-way tie between those 3 teams, Southeast Missouri, Tennessee State, and UT Martin. In that case, SEMO, Southeast Missouri, would also win the automatic bid. So it's obviously that they're in the driver's seat. They have 3 different scenarios that would put them in a position to get the automatic bid.
Right.
But TSU does have a way where they would earn the automatic bid. If Tennessee Tech, Tennessee Martin both lose, putting them at 3 losses in the conference. Tennessee State still has to win. Obviously, they beat SEMO. Both of them would be at 6-2, but because they would have the head-to-head tiebreaker, Tennessee State in that scenario would be tied at the regular season, but they would get the automatic bid because of the head-to-head tiebreaker. There's another scenario, a 3-way tie that would earn Tennessee Tech, which means that SEMO, Tennessee State, and Tennessee Tech would all finish at 2nd and 2. there's no way that UTM can get the automatic qualifier in terms of how the scenarios would fall out in terms of that. So with that being the case, this is a huge game.
Yeah.
This is what those folks that have looked at Tennessee State, particularly those that believe Eddie George could get them there coming in the season, the talent they had. A lot of ways, that's what people are looking at. This is what your expectation. They kind of had that bump in the road conference-wise, but they were able to get some close wins, some big wins, make a statement throughout the end of the season, and now they're in position where they can get it done this weekend. So with that being said, what are your thoughts in terms of this matchup between Tennessee State in terms of how they get it done?
When you look at SEMO, obviously you're looking at their offense and the play of obviously Paxton DeLauren at quarterback, what he's been able to do all year. You're talking about a quarterback who's thrown for over 3,200 yards this season. Dangerous guy. I think if you're Tennessee State over the last couple of weeks, they've been able to, the way that they've been able to win games, I think last week they scored, about 23 points? I think it was 23-20 in that game that they won this past weekend. So it's going to take, obviously, to slow down this SEMO team, the defense is going to have to be elite, or at least pretty consistent in making sure that he doesn't have a strong game to win this game. And then also your own quarterback. Like I said on this show, probably towards the middle part of the season, when we were still trying to figure out where Tennessee State was with Draylon Ellis, like he really took that step this year. And so knowing that, it's like, okay, if you're Tennessee State and this is the year where they're supposed to do it, this is the time. I think Eddie George has them positioned exactly where they need to be. It's still going to be a tall task, but he has them exactly where they need to be if they should do that. But I think it starts with being able to slow down SEMO's quarterback in their offense. That's just really what it comes down to. And obviously, they have to be consistent on offense and scoring.
Charles, this game will be on ESPN. It's at 3:30 this Saturday. Tennessee State is the home team. Yep. What are your thoughts on this matchup? Before you answer, you are on mute. So
appreciate that, Doc. No, I think Wilton. I mean, he knocked it out the park on that. I think for this one, Draylon Ellis has to be elite in this game. When you take a look at really playing mistake-free football, because I think Tennessee State's going to have that type game, and to slow down this SEMO offense. Sanders Ellis, Eric George, those guys, that front four has got to have a huge game against SEMO. So I really want to see if Tennessee State can pull this one out. It would be tremendous to see. And I've said this over the past couple of weeks, normally about this time, over the past few years, we've seen Tennessee State fade down the stretch. They've really taken that next step, and it will be tremendous to see if they can actually get it done this weekend.
Now, I'm going to be frank with this. To me, there's some litmus tests to this game. It's not just on the field. Tennessee State is going through it. They had the tough news that came out in terms of them having to let go 100-plus employees as they are under bootstrap of the Tennessee State legislature with the comptroller and people that saw that come out there. So some concerns I have there, but not only that, I'm intrigued in terms of what type of attendance they will get. They're at home. This is a chance to win the share of the conference, go to the playoffs. Maybe not quite as dominating as they've done it 20 years ago when Cole's team was coming in. Obviously, they won a playoff bid as the number 2 team coming out of OVC under the previous coach. But if this is all that, you should have some fans. This is a time where you've done everything the football team has done on their side. So I'm fascinated to see, obviously, the football players and the coaches, they're going to be out there. And those key fans, those true fans, they're going to do what they necessarily can do. But I'm interested to see, how does this stretch out? I would be extremely concerned if I was the Tennessee State administrators. If we put all this work in and put all these kind of dominoes investments into this, and we can't find a way to get, a decent crowd, I'm gonna start with you, Wilton. Your thoughts on that, and does that weigh anything in your mind, or are you just kind of like, it is what it is?
No, it's definitely important, and it just kind of comes back to one thing that I always think about when it comes to sports and in anything in life is all comes down to money and finances. But if you're fans, you're thinking like, well, when you come to a football game, do you have something to root for? Do you have a quality product or a quality team on the field that's winning games? Previous years with Tennessee State, to your point, Dr. Cavil, you just mentioned, Charles, you just mentioned like we've seen Tennessee State falter. Well, there was moments where it looked like they were going to falter, and then they didn't. And so it's like you're at a point now where, okay, we have a chance to win the Big South OVC. We don't, and what you also didn't mention in this very segment, Dr. Cavil, obviously the rumors about potentially Eddie George leaving. Well, because that's out there, but it's just
it's not just like I didn't want to put that lay on it, but
no, it's out there.
It's factual. You're talking about Kennesaw, for those that hadn't heard it. Let's put it out there.
Right, absolutely. For sure.
Rumors out there that Kennesaw would like to see him take over the program. And remember, Kennesaw is in the transition of moving from FCS to FBS.
Right.
So in general, you would say, hey, that's not necessarily a big move, but when you put it on the flag framework of FBS, it does become a little more of a significant move.
Right. So considering that, if I would think that as fans, you've been wanting a winning tradition, a winning culture. Okay, you got it. It took a little longer, but you got it. So why not come out and support? Because for one, you might not know this might be his last game. I'm not saying it's going to be his last game, but you want to make sure you come out and support.
Well, to your point, one of the ways that obviously it's hometown. There's a lot of reasons why he stayed. His son is there, but with the transfer rules, it's easy for his son to transfer.
Right.
But having a significant fan base come out there would tell him and say, oh, we can do this. We get this. You do all this kind of work, and the fans don't really show up. You like, I don't know what else to do. Right. Charles?
Now, that's a tough question because, like you said, Dr. Cavil, this is a serious litmus test, especially we know the fan base is there. This is a proud football fan base.
Yep, that's right.
And we see it year in, year out. They show up, Southern Heritage Classic. They're there. So what does it say if they don't come? I almost don't want to answer that question because this is the game that you should be there. And there's a point at which the athletic director, he kind of has to look at the tea leaves. If the fan base doesn't show for this game, you're playing for a championship. I made a joke about anytime Jackson State and Southern fans, they start sniffing a championship.
Yeah, you ain't lying. They do get close. They get to.
Yeah, they're there. The bet's gonna be packed out.
When they get close and sniffing it.
Close, yeah.
Central, ooh.
Yeah, they're there. So I would love to see this proud Tennessee State fan base show up for this game, but I don't know. That is a tough litmus test this weekend.
I'm gonna give a little love to Dave. The independent programs be on tomorrow. Aggies, they get a little excited when they get sniffing to it, but I'm not sure if this is gonna be anytime soon. They'll get back in this.
They showed up too.
Yeah. With that being said, Central is another big proud program. As we start to close out this segment, I did want to, since we're talking about playoffs, I wanted to include them. They have a chance at a large bid. They sit at 7-3, right around that top 25 mark in terms of what happens to them. They play at Delaware State as 1-10. It's been scrappy, if you would. But I think the big note of this one is the fact that you're missing 17 players. Mm-hmm. Don't know the details of who they are, how many of them are starters. There was a concern that the quarterback, Walker, was a part of that 17. It's pretty much verified that he is not. So they should have the starter quarterback, just to be fair with you in terms of what this looks like. Can Central, with all that, refocus and win this game and put themselves in a position where they can make a pretty good argument to say they should earn a bid? There's still some room in there. They're top 25, so that non-Division 2 win may sneak in there a little bit. But what are your thoughts in terms of the matchup for them and to be able to still get this win over Delaware State and put themselves at least in a position to put their resume on the table for a playoff, Charles?
It's going to hurt their depth. I mean, 17 players are 17 players. I mean, I think that's you have to be frank about that. But I still think there's enough to get it done. But if I'm Trey Oliver, I put in highlights of Valley and FAMU and say, don't let this happen to us, because it can't happen.
Yep.
So you better go take care of business.
Shout out, since you brought up Valley, I brought up A&T. Can A&T, in terms of a non-conference, can they finally get their conference win, first FCS win? Valley got it done. Big upset. I don't know about it. We'll at least put that out there as a teaser. But Wilton, what are your thoughts in terms of Central, Delaware State? Does Central still have enough to get this victory, at least to put it on the table for FCS playoff at large bid?
I think if they want to have the potential to get that bid, they absolutely have to get this win against Delaware State. And I think, personally, I think they still find a way to get this win against Delaware State. Okay. The only thing that kind of scares me about Central is that early season loss to Elon. And, this was a team last year that beat Elon. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just kind of wondering, like, will that play into, a factor in terms of, whether or not they get that bid because they lost to them this year. And then, of course, the loss to South Carolina State, even though it was by 3 points. But, just some of those things I've just been kind of thinking about.
I think you do have to kind of look at that, and it's more important because Elon is on this year's schedule. They do have a non-conference win against the CAA, and they don't necessarily do that. But the good thing is they had the playoff run, and they played really well in that playoff game for the most part.
Yeah.
And so they don't have to look at that, but they tend to look at teams that show that they're playoff material, if you would, and the fact that you had it last year in the mix, that may give them a little help. With that, let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side. I'll change gears because we're going to focus on some of these matchups on Thursday in terms of games that are coming in. And a lot of those matchups are going to be about folks setting themselves up not to have a losing season, get to 500, or squeeze out a winning season. But I want to do a little early banter back and forth in terms of a Southern Jack State matchup. I want to tease out Brian a little bit, as Brian said, he's excited. Got 3 weeks to talk about the SWAC matchup. Well, we're going to start that pain for him today as we go into this next segment. We'll talk a little bit about the early thoughts on this matchup, but we'll do it from the perspective of how do you create the focus. Both of these teams will play their rivals over the next 2 weeks, so that's a little easier way to do it. I mean, no question about it. You want to get your rivals, but I want to hear your thoughts in terms of how that plays out when they know they have clicked their ticket, injuries, rest. Your thoughts on that on the other side after this last break.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
The CAVIL Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call CAVIL.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Wilton Jackson II and Charles Bishop. The professors are in the building, and we're going to get you to professorialize a little bit here. You got Jackson State at Alcorn. They're on the road. Jackson State comes in at 9-2, number one team in Dr. Cavil's poll, top 25 team, right there on the mix in terms of where they are in many of FCS polls out there. They're not, if not number one in people's consensus HBCU poll rankings, they're number two. As I said, they're number one in ours, but they take on Alcorn, which is a top 7 team. They're at 6. So it's a pretty good team that has a winning record coming into it. 5-2 with Chase and Southern, but Southern did not relent, got the win. So you have this matchup. Then on the other side, the following Saturday after Thanksgiving, you have the traditional Bayou Classic featuring Grambling and Southern. Grambling is essentially a top 10 team in and out of the poll right there. You got a Southern team, clinched the division. They know they'll be playing the following week in terms of the SWAC championship game. Then the winner of that game, the rest of the week plays in the Celebration Bowl as it's been moved. So with all that stacked out, rivals, locked in things, how do you prepare this last 2 weeks? How do you go into these matchups? Charles, what do you say?
I mean, I think the decision's already been made. No starters will be rested. I think Jackson State's depth will be tested. They lost some notable people from what I understand for this Alcorn game. And Lorman will be rocking. I mean, they're really going to have to circle the wagons. And I think that's one of the things that Jackson State has done really, really well this year. They've come up with this term, this WeFence term, and they've really circled the wagons in a way that you really want to see a team circle the wagons going down the stretch. And I think somehow, some way, although it'll be very difficult against Alcorn, they get the victory against Alcorn. But it's going to be a tough one. That can be a game that easily goes into the fourth quarter, and Jackson State's defensive depth, I think, will definitely be tested because that's where they've stood the test of time over the past 3-4 weeks now.
Wilton?
I got Jackson State winning this game, but I don't think it's going to be an easy game. Some people may look at this and say, well, Jackson State is the overwhelming better team based off of a record. If you know anything about this game, you throw records out for the Soul Bowl. This game 2 years ago, when it was at Alcorn, came down to a Travis Hunter toe catch in the corner of the end zone.
Right.
Yep.
And so one thing you know about Alcorn, when they play at Alcorn, they're going to bring energy. Their fans are going to be rowdy. Like TC said it in his press conference this week, these players, and even if you just come into the game, you see things at Alcorn that you ain't never seen before. And just being real, you really do. And so it's just like if those players aren't really locked in, which I think that they will be, even with the players that won't necessarily get a chance to play, to Charles' point, this is where, when you're in practice, when you have that opportunity to say, hey, the number twos are going to have to step up and come in and play, this is where they get that opportunity because they have to step in and play. Jackson State's defense will definitely have to show up because you really don't know which quarterback you're going to get from Alcorn because they had a backup quarterback that came in, and they're going to have to stop the running game, even with Ja'Cory Sewell, because he'll still be playing. So,
and you better find Malachi Bailey wherever he is.
Absolutely,
is a game record.
Yep,
great points. And you talking about that touchdown, and you also had a big interception in the game. And
he did.
Obviously, he continues to do that at Colorado, is put him in position to potentially earn a Heisman. You certainly think he's going to be there, which is just incredible and amazing to think just how much talent was on the team. And Charles talked about that during the days when we had our little sidebar, just how talented Jackson was in terms of the depth of that team. With that being said, Southern is in a similar position. They have additional week. They don't have the issue in terms of players being suspended that you talked about. We'll go into the game planning to some degree with Jackson State going to Alcorn. What are your thoughts? Coach Gray is similar in terms of his mindset. Furthermore, he just don't believe he should be losing Bayou Classics.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Even as an interim, he found a way to win it. So, he put out his resume. How many championships he said he won?
I think 9 of them.
Yeah. All right, Coach. Let everybody know. So I would imagine, to your point, it's kind of like TC Taylor. Hey, we're here to play football. We hear it over there with South Carolina State as they clinch things one game at a time, and he trying to win it. So it's intriguing that those teams that are having success, all those coaches kind of have that mantra in some form or fashion. They all happen to be HBCU folks in terms of you all that are concerned about retreads. These folks are HBCU lifers for the most part, and look what they've found a way to do at various levels coming up the ranks, churning and getting it done. So credit to them on that behalf. But Charles, I'm going to stick with you, Wilton, and come Charles to close it out.
Okay.
What are your thoughts in terms of Southern and their matchup? Do you see them doing similar to what TC Taylor said, that, hey, we're going to get out there and try to get us a dub?
I do. I think if you're Southern, you've lived throughout the latter part of the season as the cardiac cats in overtime. And it would be good to get another game where you don't have to win it, particularly a rivalry game, in overtime. And I think it would also give them a really good strong point kind of going into the SWAC championship and saying, like, okay, instead of us having to go the extra to the nth degree to get a win in a game, that, you know what, we can win a game in a definitive fashion, that we are truly, truly prepared coming into the SWAC championship game after a rival game like, you get against Grambling. I will say this, though. Even though Grambling has had its ups and downs, I do think Mickey Joseph will have that team prepared for that game. I think they get a very tough outing from Grambling, but I think Southern walks away with the win. But if you're Southern, you want to walk away not just with a barely getting a win, you want to walk away somewhere with a convincing win, if you can.
Fascinating. And we already know one half of the bracket, MEAC, South Carolina State, the Bulldogs, Chennisberry, has clinched that. Has another game to play against Norfolk State. And so you have a little bit of that scenario to obviously have couple more weeks, and I imagine they want to continue to do things one game at a time. But because they clinched their tickets and celebrate them, I want you to give me your thoughts in terms of their scenario going into this, since we talk about teams finishing it up early and locking in bids. You have that matchup. But before I do that, Charles, give me your thoughts in terms of Bayou Classic.
I mean, what could be better than a third-string quarterback in Jalen Woods getting some more reps? And what could be better than playing in front of 50,000 people on a national TV audience, going up against a rival? And that springboards you into the SWAC championship. I mean, what could be a better scenario, I think, for this Southern Jaguar offense? And the thing that's jumped out for me lately, whatever we thought about their offensive line at the beginning of the season, they started to figure it out now. I mean, you take a look at this past week, this is the kind of the Southern that I kind of expected to see. They had 3 running backs rush for over 60 yards in this game. They rushed for over 200 yards in this game. So they're getting back to what I think makes them one of the scarier teams to me in terms of the physicality part that we didn't see at the beginning part of the season. They're starting to kind of assert themselves over the end. So it's going to be a fun game in terms of trying to get the win over Grambling. But, playing in that sort of cauldron, what could be a better scenario that springboards you into the SWAC championship? Because it's going to have 50,000 plus people there. Another hated rival. I mean, what could be better?
Yeah, I like it. Well, Wilton Jackson, second as we come to close. Last one we'll talk about is South Carolina State and Norfolk State. Again, they clinched the ticket, as I alluded to just moments ago. What are your thoughts about them going in this matchup in terms of how they plan to move forward?
I think you're South Carolina State. You essentially just want to make sure that you're in the season strong. You know, you don't want to hurt yourself. Well, for one, you want to make sure that you stay injury free.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. When you have situations where you've sewn up your conference and you know that you are going to be playing in Celebration Bowl, you want to stay injury free. You don't want to get lackadaisical in the aspect of you let Norfolk State hang around in this game and this is a team you're supposed to beat. Granted, you know that you're supposed to beat them, but if you're getting complacent, then this is a Norfolk State team. They can put up points. They've shown that they can score points throughout the season. So I think with a coach like Chennisberry, which we know him to be, those guys are going to be ready. They're going to be ready to play. They're not going to, be easy on Norfolk State. They're not going to be, looking ahead to the Celebration Bowl. I think that they handle business in the same fashion they've done over the last several weeks, and they get the win against Norfolk State and really start that preparation process for preparing for the Celebration Bowl.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Charles?
Yeah, can they start out fast and do kind of the same thing to Norfolk State that they did against Morgan State? Start out fast, get up by a couple of touchdowns so that they can sit down Eric Phoenix and some of the other guys. I think in the third and fourth quarter, I think that's going to be key. Starting out fast in this game, putting it on Norfolk State early so that you can get those starters out of there and go into the Celebration Bowl injury free with rest.
Yes.
For sure. Rest is going to be interesting in terms of how we get it done with those matchups. But any additional thoughts you have in terms of what could be Celebration Bowl? South Carolina State versus Jackson State or Southern. If it's Jackson State, it's a quote-unquote rematch of the game played 2 years ago. Yeah. Different coaches, obviously different players. Or it could be the entry in terms of Southern making their first trip, going to play South Carolina State. For those that have followed HBC over the years, recall when South Carolina State and Southern played in Atlanta for the classic. When you go that far back, Wilton sticking with you. And in terms of that, what are your thoughts in terms of what that looks like?
In terms of, I probably will be a little biased when I say this. I think the better draw in the matchup would obviously be Jackson State and South Carolina State. If Southern gets there and if Southern beats Jackson State and gets there and plays against South Carolina State, I still think it'll be a good game. You're talking about two coaches that know HBCU football well. Obviously, Terrence Graves, Chennisberry. I think both teams will be prepared, but I will say this specifically if it's a Jackson State, South Carolina State matchup. And I said this on the show Sunday. Being that Jackson State just faced Alabama State, which was a really tough defensive opponent, very physical, I think that was a really strong test for them and something that they could potentially see again when they play South Carolina State. This is a test. It was like Jackson State has been pretty much physical all throughout the SWAC all season, and so knowing that they were going to get that, essentially a big punch from Alabama State, and knowing that the defense was able to pull out that win, and obviously running backs like Irv Mulligan and some others weren't able to really. Jackson State wasn't able to really like run the ball like they typically would. But what's going to happen in that case if that's to happen against South Carolina State? Well, you pulled out a win against a very physical Alabama State team, so now you have some continuity, you have some experience in dealing with what that could potentially look like.
Good stuff. Charles, close it out. First, South Carolina State Celebration Bowl, and then the potential matchups.
Yeah, I think South Carolina State, by way of having that rest, I would think that they would be the favorite against whomever the SWAC champion would be.
I think that's right.
Taking a look at that, I think you'll have tremendous representation, whether it's Jackson State or Southern, with regards to that fan base going to Atlanta, both strong fan bases in Atlanta. But just taking a look at the matchups, I think the intriguing matchup, obviously, would be South Carolina State and Jackson State. And Wilton, to your point, that was a huge litmus test. That was a true 5-yard fight playing Alabama State. And Jackson State would probably be in that same type of physical ball game against South Carolina State. I would have to give the edge to South Carolina State if it was South Carolina State and Southern to South Carolina State, just from the standpoint of, has Southern been in one of those you know,
physical game,
grind it out, fight it out, grind it out type game. So, you know, for that, I would lean a little bit towards South Carolina State.
Jackson State, South Carolina State, you lean a little more, I guess, obviously Jackson State, physicality.
TC has said that teams have to match Jackson State's physicality. I think that would be the one. This has been they showed me something against Alabama State. I give them credit.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that was a heck of a statement.
Yeah.
Man, that was a ball game. With that being said, let's close it right there. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share a podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, come from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Washington Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock. We'll be back on Thursday at 6 o'clock. I'll be on the road, but I'll be prepared to give you a show there. Sunday at 9 a.m. We'll be back at it. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil. It's DrKenyattaCavil, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab on Facebook and YouTube. Dream big. Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon, Charles.
Of course.
Wilton.
Lecture.
Dismiss.